Today, our special guest is Amy Boroff of Amplify, who is here to talk to us about monthly giving. And she's going to give us some strategies for creating your monthly giving program, some of the best practices, and some of her best tips and tricks. So with that, let's welcome Amy. Welcome, Amy. I have been looking forward to this conversation because I don't think we've done anything on monthly giving here on this channel, and it is a huge part of the nonprofit fundraising strategy. So why don't we start with a brief introduction on who you are and Amplify, because I love some of the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much for having me here to talk with you today. I'm so excited to talk about monthly giving, and I know that it'll be a wonderful conversation. And thank you for the compliment on Amplify. Like yourself, we really do try to put out really good content that's valuable for the people in the nonprofit world and for fundraising in general. So I'm Amy Boroff, and I'm a development specialist with Amplify. And I work with nonprofit organizations to strategize on reaching their goals through communications and using their data. And what that looks like for every organization could be very different. It could be a fundraising goal, it could be an engagement goal. But my job is to really help nonprofits share their message in a way that donors know how, that resonates with donors and donors engage back with them.
And I think you said the word there that we love on this show, and that's data. It's so important.
Data is crucial. And I think it's such an overarching, word to say now, because we know that especially when we're talking about monthly giving, we're looking at the data that we're getting from reports and studies that are providing us with this important information. And then there's your internal nonprofit data that we use to really communicate effectively. But if we bring it back to data and to monthly giving specifically, I think that we've seen for quite a few years now some of the data in some of the studies and most of the studies coming out that's been talking about retention going down, monthly donor giving going up. And sort of when we formulate it all together in the latest reports that we're getting, I would say that it's a really good thing we're having this conversation, and it's not a surprise so many people are asking about it. And I'm sure you've seen it yourself, just people playing around with that notion. What does it mean to have a monthly giving program? What's the impact of a monthly giving program? And so the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, their first quarter report for 2021 recently came out. And, keeping in mind for 2022, I'm sorry, keeping in mind for 2021, it was a bit skewed and the numbers were very positive. It is showing that there is a significant decline in donors. So there's a 5.6% decline in the number of donors giving. There's fortunately remains an increase, a $2 increase or 2% increase in the dollar amount being given, although comparatively to the previous years, it was 10%. But the most concerning number is that retention is down by about 6%. And retention in itself is a strong word. So we can focus on how it ties in with monthly giving a little bit, right? So when we look at monthly giving, we know that 36% of people who gave in 2020 returned in 2021 those are monthly givers. So 36% is a really significant number, and it's an increase of 24%.
So I am going to be doing a video here shortly on some fundraising fundamentals, and part of that is that donor pyramid, that we bring them in through our annual campaigns, and now we need to renew them. And monthly giving is a fantastic way of renewing donors, and that stewardship plays into a lot of that. But yeah, how do you move that person up so that you keep them? Because it costs so much more to get a new donor than it does to keep an existing donor and move them up.
1,000%. And we know this. And we can get the exact dollar amounts. But you asked a really, really great question. And there's, a lot of the people often pause before doing a monthly giving program, because there's so many unanswered questions. How do you know who to include it in, who to offer it to? How do you know how to market it and brand it? And that all depends on your own organization. Every organization is unique. But I think the most important pattern that you want to look for when identifying who to launch your monthly giving program with and who to approach it with would be your donors that give multiple times throughout the year. So generally speaking, the donors that give multiple times throughout the year will be more inclined to do monthly giving than those that just give, even if it's one generous gift. Having said that, the other number and sort of sweet spot is the under $200 group, which actually works out pretty well because that is the group that is the less retained percentage of donors, right? And so we look at it, okay, so what's important to starting this program, not only just identifying who you're sending it to, right? But there are really, we have to look at what your goals are for a monthly giving. Obviously, many would think financially. It could be retention. You might have an organization, if you look at certain nonprofits, if you look at schools or independent schools, a monthly giving program could be different for an alumni group than it could be for an parents of someone who's a current student. And it could go towards different things. So your first step is really sitting down, right, and discussing what are your goals? What group of people are you most inclined to reach out to start to formulate this group? And what does it look like? This is the part where I think I have fun with, and that I think that when you're, the branding aspect of a monthly giving program, and a lot of the branding really is all about the nonprofit, what they want the messaging to be. When you're starting a monthly giving program, what perks are you giving? Right? So let's talk about that part.
That's a big question that I get asked a lot is what are the perks? What does this look like? How do we format this?
And as a donor, I think, so as someone who would be part of a monthly program, you want to feel special and you want to feel like you are making a difference. And so your organization needs to think about this from the beginning. And that's all in your messaging and tone and in the type of name that you're creating for this organization. You're also deciding, what updates are you sharing, and will we be able to send newsletters to our giving circle. But we want to look at what type of expectations they should have of us. On the flip side of that is, when we're looking at different age groups, we know that there are the younger generations right now are really, once they start giving to an organization, they're attached to an organization. It's a standard. We always know people don't give to an organization, they give to the cause. And so once, the millennials, Gen Z, once they do their research and once they really, find an organization that they like, they will be inclined to stick with that organization. And that's an opportunity to start focusing on some of the younger people in your organization. And we've seen, I don't know if this is internationally, but in the United States, we definitely have seen an increase in the past year of young professional groups.
No, we're seeing the same thing. Yeah, that I know we were gonna, if we had time, talk about more of that generational fundraising and the differences, but it's so important in this topic because younger donors and say our silver donors expect completely different things from being a monthly donor and like to be communicated with differently and like to hear back differently.
1,000 times over. And even if you are comparing older generations versus younger generation of giving, we know that older generation is more inclined to send us checks. Yes, that still happens. But most monthly giving is an automated process. So that is an important thing to think about. Not so fun stuff to think about is your processing systems. What happens if you have credit cards that are expiring and they're on automatic payments? Do you have a term? Is it a 12-year term? Is your monthly giving, do you give the option of it being, a 3-year term? And do you have the systems in place to automatically check the credit cards? Or do you have to do that in advance and make a note in your system or whatever your database is?
Or an Apple Pay subscription is really nice too, because then they're automatically updating their credit card number through that. And it's a one-click process. It's beautiful.
That's such a great, absolutely. And I hadn't even thought about Apple Pay at all. I forgot what we had mentioned with the older generation. You don't want to exclude them. I'm a big believer in, first of all, we talk to our audiences. So we know that direct mail is also just as important, and it's just as important because it's a multiple touch. The more messaging we go across multiple platforms, the more it engages and enhances people's and lets people know to become more interactive with you, and it gives people a sense of recognition with you. So when we're doing a campaign, we always say, monthly giving in particular as well, you want to use the same messaging across various platforms. Action is preceded by engagement. So someone who sees you engaging and sees your organization multiple times is going to eventually act with you. And that happens as well when you're sending a direct mail. Again, it's important to know your organization. And so you could also always try small groups and see what that engagement is. And then I think an important way to start and a good way to gauge your own organization is within your organization.
We always say, gather the team.
Gather the team. I think, when gathering your board members, gathering your volunteers, maybe some of your long-term donors, confidants, that really, good allies, to get different perspectives, to diversify our communications is really important. And asking all those stakeholders, what's important to you? What we want to initiate this program. Let's say it's for sustainability. Well, we know it's sustainability. We know that 42% of monthly givers give more annually than a one-time donor. That is huge. And, so just looking at that, breaking down these facts, explaining why it's so important, and looking at what we talked about much earlier, we sort of touched on, is designating those monthly donors to a certain area of your organization. If it's just general funding, let's just be honest and say, these have been really scary and tough times. And we don't want to have to worry about opening our doors to the food pantry. It is a dire need now for us to be for sustainability in the future. And so we're reaching out to some really key core people. And starting with that sort of basic message with your stakeholders and asking them what's important to them, what communications would make you feel special. And so honing around that. Have you ever done a capital campaign or worked on a capital camp? Is it called a capital campaign in Canada?
Yeah, it is. It's a capital campaign here. Yep.
So I think of launching a monthly giving as almost like a capital campaign, right? In different phases, because your first phase is going to be your research and internal questioning phase, really looking at your data, finding your donors. There's a few different patterns. Like I said, your younger donors, preferably that have given more than once, your donors that are giving multiple times per year, donors that you can certainly try with donors who have given one time. The idea is once you launch it, and you have your first ask that you go to, you launch it with your board, and then you launch it with your volunteers, and then you launch it externally. And once you launch that and you have your brand on everything, you can add monthly giving to anything, and you can make it should be part of a communications plan. So your monthly giving communication should consist of communicating to the donors, and then communicating as well to your network in general, just making sure that they're aware that there's this opportunity for them to become a bronze level supporter.
Yeah. Yeah, the last organization that I worked with, we were just building the monthly giving program, and it was included, information was included in the volunteer packages. There was social media posts. It was always on the bottom of any of the direct mail pieces in the newsletters. Just getting that information out there. And and the hand-to-hand combat as well, doing thank you calls when someone donated and fit with that criteria. Then I would have to send them information or actually mention it to them. And that was the hard part. Is how do you ask someone for a monthly gift and face to face?
But what you just said is so important, and a huge step, which is that when you went to call that donor, you already had them on your radar. You knew that when this group of people made their next donation, I don't know, that they had a red flag, and that was the group that you knew were then primed to really be in that position. And the important thing about that really is that while we have these great plans and these great ideas, sometimes we need for them to play out. And the important, that's that communications plan and that strategy, right? So, there can be pitfalls when you're doing this. And it's a really important thing to stay organized with, because, especially in organizations that have a major gift department and an individual giving department, and there's a lapse, right? Or if one department isn't really, aware of initiatives and long-term strategies that are going on with the other, and confusion can occur, and you're then sort of overlapping on your communications and sending mixed messages to your donors and mixed communications. And so if you have a prospect list based on criteria that you've established that you can work off of in a 3-year term, which is an important thing, a measurable amount of time and a measurable outcome, then you can, it's a way of saying to your events department, to your major gifts department, to your special email list department, for 5 months, let's really focus our communications and not overload this person. And then saying when the time is right, thank you so much for your gift, or saying, or knowing that you want to give special attention to this group right here. And knowing that in 3 months, you hope to turn them over into monthly donors. And that's a huge, crucial, that timeline, right?
And that goes back to the donor data. So because I was doing the thank you calls, I would open up their donor profile, have all their donor history, see where they fit in the whole pipeline area, and be able to because I'm going to record that communication with them anyway, because I phoned them, I thanked them, I'm having a conversation with them. So I record that, but having all of that right there, I cannot stress enough how important donor management is.
And listen, the fundraising in 2021 was more than sustained. It was, knock on wood, kindness came out, right? And donors were up, retention was up, everything was up across the board. Donors were up by 10% this time last year. Dollars were up by 6%, and retention was up by 1%. Fast forward, now we're a year ahead. Donors are down by 5.6%, 2.3% dollars are up, and then retention down 6.22%. The reason why the dollar amount, and this is super important, the reason why that dollar amount still remains a $2 increase is because the majority of the donations that keep your organizations afloat are from major donors. The donors that give over $50,000 sustain they are the 1 to 2% within organizations that keep your fundraising at or above budget. So while you are losing donors at retention rates at 6%, your major donors are historically give more each year. And that is what is sustaining you. And that is not a sustainable pyramid. That's not a pyramid.
Oh.
And it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It is literally happens and happened to every organization at this moment. And so you want to look at your data, that D word, and take out, it's not take out your 2%. Your major donors deserve your love and attention, and that should always be your priority. So please give that to them. But somebody else should be looking at those donors under 200 and identifying the first key people who's given more than once per year, who's given year after year regularly. Then look at those younger folks and people giving online. Now, giving online, we know that I get we have to say this. So when we're branding your marketing, your monthly program, your monthly giving, there has to be a digital component to that.
Yeah.
Online giving and monthly giving go hand in hand. Online giving, I think 36% of monthly giving returned in 2021, but
wasn't it 62% of gifts are made online now or something like
that? The online statistics, monthly giving is 22% of all online revenue. So as monthly online revenue obviously has increased year to year, and then so has monthly giving. The average monthly giving gift increased by $1. It was 24, it's now 25. And the average annual gift, I think, is 111. It is 125, which is up from 111. So if you calculate that, it's still, 300 versus 111. And, we're not talking about making crazy asks. We're not saying to someone who gives $100 a year, we want you to give $300 a year. And so, going about that approach is also a very interesting, an important, how do we know what to ask for? How do we know how to launch this? And this goes back to your clean data. What you don't want to do is send an email to anyone in the category that's raised up to $200, suggesting that they make monthly gifts of $15, $30, or $45. So you want to really make sure that when you're looking at your data, that you're pulling it out and that you're segmenting it. And personalizing it as much as possible, and using whatever tools our database has to help us. So what's a great way to use your data? So, okay, I said something about events before, but let's say you have a donor that you has come to your events on, you have a leadership committee every year, or a leadership gala. And every year this person has come to your gala. First of all, if you haven't reached out to that person, it's a great time to ask them and send a survey out to ask them, we've noticed that you've been coming to our galas, would you like to get more involved? We'd love to learn more about you. But more importantly, maybe in their ask, in their letter, that anyone who's attended a gala and has donated year after year after year, that's one segment that you send a communication to. And say, we understand your leadership is so important to you. You've supported our gala for several years, and leadership is important to us and for the future communities, and we'd like to welcome you to our leadership circle. And so that segment to those who participated in an event versus those who volunteer for you, those who might have made a donation for a walkathon. So looking at your data closely gives you the opportunity to segment towards not only the dollar amount that has been donated in the past, but the donor type.
I have never thought about doing it with event participants.
You know what? Event things always get lost. And I really think 2020 was a very big opportunity for organizations because we all went virtual, obviously. And what we looked like to the outside world and was different. And there was this new invitation to your organization for people who had never been exposed to you before. And in return, we now had access to multiple, many more contacts. And we're able to use that to really let people know who our organizations are, but understand what their interests were. So if they were logging on for your gala, we know probably less about them than if they logged on for a informational session about volunteering, right? Because we don't, galas are always sticky like that. It's, the same idea of having a peer-to-peer fundraiser. It's hard to get the names and contact information for everyone who donated to a team. And so I really think 2020 gave us this opportunity. And I say that hoping that organizations watching this can utilize that, because knowing, well, here's an opportunity now that I've never looked at it this way before, maybe, and say, I haven't followed up. I'm not saying for monthly giving, but I haven't followed up to say, did you find that program educational or helpful? And are there other ways that you'd like to learn about us? Do you want to be on our mailing list? Et cetera from there. And so just like monthly giving, looking at acquisition right now and retention it all goes together. It's a pipeline, like new donors, retained donors, monthly giving, major givers. And we see very unique ideas, very unique initiatives from organizations, student-run, student-led. Sometimes, monthly giving can be like a board. It's very diverse, and there can be ambassadors. When you're creating your monthly giving program right now, a hashtag might have to. What do you think about hashtags?
Yeah, I do like that. I actually am a big fan of providing data, like providing downloads, so that if somebody wants to be an ambassador, here's some sample posts that you can share. Here's a story for Instagram that you can share, things like that.
I love that. And you know what I would love to see? I don't know, date myself a little bit, but when, peer-to-peer fundraising systems came out, I was working as a walk manager, and I was so excited. And all I wanted at the time, I was like, the only thing missing from this is like a little button where I think, Facebook and Twitter were on, this is, 20 years ago, but more than that, like 40. But anyway, but so I think at the time I was so excited because now you could make this donation. It was online and your team would get the credit for it. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if there was a little donate, I donated to on button that you could just click and everybody on Facebook would know. Well, we saw that evolve, and we see the impact that has. And we know millennials, I don't know the percentage, but it's a larger than expected percentage. Millennials tend to give more to organizations that they see that their friends and colleagues are giving to. There's a trust factor there, and it's worth reading about to find out those statistics. But so, there's nothing stopping your organization from creating that monthly giving badge on social media. Having the conversation with your board members saying, hey, I am going to drop you some communications. If you have a monthly program that's in existing and your goal for 2023 is to grow it by X%, well, how can you use Giving Tuesday to promote your monthly giving program? So many organizations are hesitant to run fundraising campaigns, and that's understandable. I get it. But how can you use this day or any other day that you want to create as your day of giving or as your day of awareness or both, and to let people know about your monthly giving and what it means? And if you have an existing program already, having a monthly giver share their reason for why they're a monthly giver, feedback on being a monthly giver. I think it would be really interesting to compile and see all these fantastic examples, because there are so many various structured programs. And I think there's an intimidation factor. Certainly, we know there is. And so I would love like this database of examples and success stories that everyone can sort of pull from and see, you know, best feedback and examples.
Anything that you want to say in closing?
One of the things, and one of a great practice that an organization I recommend definitely doing, certainly if you're looking at a monthly giving program and trying to establish, you know, what would we call it, and what would it mean, and what would the goal be? You know, ask your board members and ask your staff members, ask your volunteers, write down in 3 words. You know, describe how would you do, not 3 words, but as you know, set a parameter. You know, write 2 sentences about our organization. What's our organization's mission without using our mission? You know, what goals do you want to see in the next few years? And the other great, I mean, it's so underutilized, and I've only done it myself or been involved with it, but a word board, you know, on a board meeting, just put in some words, because just save those words. Save those words for your appeals when you're writing them, because we run out of words. Save them for when you go for any naming opportunities for your monthly giving program, different level monthly giving programs. And just, you know, use them to remind everybody of what their words are and what's important to them for your, you know, that represents your organization. I think that's so important. And especially when you're going into that monthly giving. And so I would challenge everybody to leave this conversation when you watch this, when you're next time that you're going through your data. I really ask for you to pull your data and look at different groups of funders, and just look at what donors you've had for repeat years. And then once you have the donors who have given for you in 2021, 2020, and 2019, pull those out. Look at those, see how many there are there. This, you know, for different organizations, this could be a really broad number. And then if it's a really big number, ask your staff members, divvy it up. You know, each take a certain number and watch those, you know, give yourselves maybe 3 months, you know, 6 months, 3 asks, and follow those donors and just to get an idea. Once we start looking at donors, once we start seeing, and I think it's different when we look at a database, when we look up one person, because if we're not keeping good notes, it's very hard to tell. So if we're one-on-one, if we have that opportunity to just say, even if it's just 5, even if you do not have the capacity to do, you know, whatever, if each staff member just took 5 donors and really looked at their data and took the time to have conversations with them and started like recognizing patterns, and if you have the opportunity to, you know, dig deeper, your communications with that person, once you start putting those notes in your database, by the time that you go to engage that donor with a monthly donor program, you'll have the option of reaching out to them on a personal level in a multitude of ways. And, you know, organizations that are geographically, right? So a statewide organization that might have multiple offices. When you're talking to your donors and saying, you know, a monthly giving or something, you know, you could pick a region that's within 10 miles of that donor, saying, you know, I just wanted to thank you again because you've helped sustain the programs that are right in your backyard. As a, you know, and then you could tell a story about those programs. And, you know, slowly and then letting those people know, I know that this is important to you because this is where you live. And you've shown that that's important to you. And so maybe your monthly giving is more of a geographical, like the Northern Calgary Warriors, you know, or the Northern New Jersey team support. It all is really important, you know, goes back to your donors and what's important to them. And so, people get so crazed and get worried about hearing, look at your data and use your data. But if you're not yet using it, there's so much opportunity too.
Well, I sure appreciate this. It was lovely to meet you, and I will be engaging on Instagram because I do love your posts.
I'm so excited to stay in touch with you, and I look forward to you sharing your wisdom with us on Amplify on our blog. And thank you so much.